7 video post on Patricia McCormick's Sold, and I thought that Sold did a great deal with Butler's article on ideas of feminist theory and gender performances. I thought it was really interesting how Mumtaz, not sure if that's how you say that, but if her aunt Mumtaz plays the more dominant role, or I guess you could even say the more masculine role, the way that this society is almost constructed within the brothel. And I think it's interesting that, she does shy away from her subservient side until she was confronted and then, of course, slapped across the face by, the superior male. I just thought that transition, the fluidity that Butler does talk about of, transitioning from one gender, from identifying and I guess embracing the ideas and the characteristics that go along with one gender, and then, of course, being able to be fluid enough to slide into the other one. I also thought that this book did a lot more than just simply tell the story and, of course, just the role of the subservient, adolescent from Nepal. I thought it did so much more than that. But again, going back to genders, I really feel like that it was interesting how the men who were the ones that brought the HIV, or as they called it in the book, the virus, into the brothel, didn't really seem to, I don't know, it didn't really generate much of a response from Mumtaz. She was more interested in getting any of the girls that did contract the virus out, which in no way am I endorsing that men are solely responsible for the girls contracting the virus, but I think it was really important to note that, the men were not responsible for wearing condoms. In fact, when Shahana, I think that's how you say her name, when Shahana gives some condoms to Lakshmi, she does it really hesitantly and almost very secretly so that Mumtaz doesn't beat her. And I guess the point that I was trying to make there with the condoms is that, the men are able to do whatever they want because the women are always going to take the hit for it, just simply because in this text and what seems to be in, sex trafficking and sex industry, that women are disposable and they're replaceable. So I thought it was interesting how that was almost constantly driven throughout the book, is just the disposability of women. And I also thought that it was interesting, too, because, you take Lakshmi, who's this young girl who was very stubborn, very resistant to the change initially. And even so, even throughout her journey, she remained very persistent in herself. And I thought that was interesting because, again, in this subservient culture, she was able to almost embrace the gender roles or the societal roles of a man, of masculinity throughout this text and throughout McCormick's vignettes. And I thought that was really interesting, how eventually that did lead her to what some might consider to be safety at the end of, in her final vignette, where the Americans and the policemen do come and, rescue her. I don't know if I would necessarily consider that to be the point that she achieved her safety. I guess you could say physically, yes. But honestly, I really feel like her safety was secured, perhaps for lack of a better term, when Harris taught her to read and write. So I think I threw a lot out there, kind of talking about the different gender roles and how Mumtaz and Shahana and Lakshmi embraced them or perhaps transitioned from one into another, just the fluidity of them, as well as, was Lakshmi safe at the end of the text when, she was rescued by the Americans and the policemen, or was she safe just by being educated? So feel free to respond. That's pretty much what I have to offer.